On December 15, 1944, the most famous bandleader in the world boarded a small military aircraft in England. His name was Glenn Miller. His orchestra had defined the sound of an entire generation. Songs like "In the Mood" and "Moonlight Serenade" were playing on radios across America and Europe. At the height of World War II, he had given up his career and his fortune to lead a military band, entertaining Allied troops to keep morale alive during the darkest years of the war. He was flying to Paris to set up a Christmas concert for thousands of soldiers. The flight should have taken less than 2 hours. The plane never arrived. No wreckage was ever found. No bodies were ever recovered. No black box, no debris field, nothing washed up on either coastline. One of the most famous men on Earth simply vanished over the English Channel, and after more than 80 years, his disappearance remains completely unsolved. This is the story of Glenn Miller's final flight. If you love unsolved mysteries like this one, go ahead and hit subscribe right now. We post a brand new historical mystery every single week, and you genuinely don't want to miss what's coming next. To understand why his disappearance shocked the entire world, you need to understand exactly how famous Glenn Miller really was. Born in Iowa in 1904, Miller worked his way up through the American big band scene throughout the 1920s and 30s as a trombonist and arranger before forming his own orchestra in 1938. What happened next was unprecedented. The Glenn Miller Orchestra became, by some measures, the most popular musical act in the entire world. Between 1939 and 1942, he had more than a dozen #1 hits. "In the Mood" became one of the best-selling and most recognizable recordings of the entire swing era. "Moonlight Serenade" became his signature song, and one of the most beloved romantic ballads in American history. He wasn't just a musician. He was a cultural phenomenon, on par with the biggest movie stars of his era. Then, in 1942, at the absolute peak of his fame and earning power, Miller did something almost unthinkable. He gave it all up to join the war effort. He was too old for combat at 38, but he successfully petitioned to form a military band, the Army Air Force Band, with the specific mission of boosting troop morale through music. He toured military bases. He performed for wounded soldiers. He recorded radio broadcasts specifically designed to remind homesick American troops of what they were fighting for. By late 1944, with Allied forces having recently liberated Paris, Miller was given a critical assignment: travel ahead of his band to Paris and arrange a massive Christmas broadcast and concert for the troops stationed there. On the morning of December 15, 1944, Glenn Miller arrived at an airfield in Twinwood Farm, England. The weather that day was notoriously poor. Thick fog blanketed much of southern England, and conditions over the English Channel were considered hazardous even by wartime standards. His original flight had actually been delayed for days due to the weather. Growing impatient and anxious about the upcoming Paris broadcast, Miller arranged an alternative flight on a small single-engine UC-64 Norseman aircraft, piloted by Flight Officer John Morgan. There were only 3 people aboard: Miller, the pilot, and Lieutenant Colonel Norman Bessel, who had arranged the flight. The aircraft took off from Twinwood Farm at approximately 1:55 p.m., heading for Paris's Orly Field. It was never seen again. When the plane failed to arrive in Paris, there was initially no major alarm. Wartime communications were often delayed, and military personnel frequently changed plans without immediate notification. It wasn't until December 18, 3 days later, that Miller's band, expecting him to lead the historic Christmas broadcast, realized something was deeply wrong. A search was eventually launched, but wartime conditions made any thorough investigation difficult. The English Channel was an active war zone, filled with mines, the constant risk of artillery fire, and the general chaos of a continent still at war. No wreckage was found. No bodies were recovered. No distress signal was ever received. The United States government did not publicly announce Miller's disappearance until December 24, 1944, Christmas Eve. The news devastated millions of fans worldwide who had been eagerly anticipating his planned Christmas broadcast. For over 80 years, researchers, aviation historians, and amateur investigators have proposed numerous theories about what happened during those final minutes over the English Channel. Theory 1, mechanical failure due to icing, the most widely accepted explanation. The UC-64 Norseman aircraft Miller was flying had a carburetor design known to be vulnerable to icing in cold, humid conditions, exactly the weather present that day. If ice built up in the carburetor, the engine could have lost power gradually, giving the pilot little time to react before crashing into the cold waters of the channel. This remains the most commonly cited explanation among aviation historians, though it has never been definitively proven without the wreckage. Theory 2, friendly fire from jettisoned bombs. This is perhaps the most controversial and widely discussed theory. In 1985, a British former RAF navigator named Fred Shaw came forward with a striking claim. He stated that on the exact day of Miller's disappearance, he had been aboard a squadron of RAF bombers returning from an aborted mission over Germany. Standard procedure required bombers to jettison their unused bombs over a designated, safe, zone in the English Channel before landing, since landing with live explosives aboard was extremely dangerous. Shaw claimed he witnessed a small aircraft, matching the description of Miller's plane, get caught in the blast zone and go down into the sea. If true, this would mean Miller's plane was inadvertently destroyed by Allied bombs meant to be dropped safely into empty water. This theory gained significant traction and was the basis for several documentary investigations, though it has also faced criticism regarding the exact timing and flight paths involved. Theory 3. The flight never actually happened as officially recorded, a controversial fringe theory. Some conspiracy-minded researchers have suggested confusion or even cover-up regarding the exact date and details of the flight, citing inconsistencies in official military records from the chaotic final months of the war. Most serious historians dismiss this theory, attributing record inconsistencies to the simple chaos of wartime documentation rather than any deliberate concealment. Theory 4. Simple bad weather and pilot error. Some aviation experts believe the explanation may be more straightforward than dramatic. Poor visibility combined with a relatively inexperienced pilot navigating treacherous winter conditions over open water, without modern instrumentation, may have simply resulted in the aircraft flying into the sea. In the decade since 1944, several research expeditions and investigations have attempted to locate wreckage in the English Channel that could be conclusively identified as Miller's aircraft. Despite advances in sonar and underwater search technology, no confirmed wreckage has ever been recovered. The English Channel floor in the relevant search area is littered with debris from numerous wartime aircraft and vessels, making positive identification extraordinarily difficult even when wreckage is found. In 2014, on the 70th anniversary of his disappearance, renewed media interest prompted fresh calls for investigation, but no new conclusive evidence emerged. What we know for certain, Glenn Miller boarded a flight on December 15, 1944. The aircraft never reached its destination. No trace of the plane, the pilot, Lieutenant Colonel Bessel, or Miller himself has ever been found. His military band went on to perform the Christmas broadcast without him, a bittersweet tribute to a man who never made it to see his own historic concert. Glenn Miller gave up fame, fortune, and the easiest life imaginable to risk everything entertaining troops during the darkest years of the Second World War. He never made it to his final concert. His music, however, never disappeared. In the Mood and Moonlight Serenade remain some of the most recognized recordings in American musical history, played at weddings, in films, and on the radio to this day, a permanent legacy from a man whose final fate we still don't fully understand. What do you think really happened over the English Channel that December afternoon? Mechanical failure? Friendly fire? Something else entirely? Let me know your theory in the comments below. I read every single one. We've now covered the Roanoke Colony, the Dyatlov Pass incident, the Mary Celeste, Amelia Earhart, and the Voynich manuscript, 5 of history's greatest unsolved mysteries, with a new one dropping every single week. If you want to be notified the moment the next mystery goes live, hit subscribe and tap the bell icon right now. It takes 2 seconds, and it's the single best way to make sure you never miss an episode. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. If a story like this gives you genuine chills, do me a favor right now and tap that subscribe button. It costs you nothing, and it genuinely helps a small channel like this one grow. Okay, back to the story.